So my favorite quote of all time came from my mentor and Upa Guru Ram Dass. And what he said was the greatest gift that you can ever give to anyone else is to work on yourself in their presence. And that is exactly what I was called upon to do as Rob's mom a couple of weeks ago started to decline. And we knew that she was pretty much getting ready to drop the body and expand into something so much greater. And I volunteered for hospice for, gosh, a decade and a half. I've sat beside people who have died and held their hand and watched and been witness to that process. But I've never been there since my spiritual awakening. I've really never sat next to somebody I really, really felt emotional about, somebody that I was personally close to in that process. And I was given the opportunity to do that over the past 2 weeks. To give you a little bit of background, Rob's mom is 83 years old. She moved down here a couple years ago because she was starting to decline a little bit and having some challenges with her memory. And we just really wanted to have some time with her. And I wanted to get to know her better because I was kind of new to the family. And so we moved her down here so that we could really have some quality interaction with her while she was still able to remember it. And since the time that she moved down here, she had several falls and a few different moves to different places as her memory continued to decline. And she was having a lot of challenges. She just really was feeling lonely and lost, and she was watching her independence go away. And Rob and I were doing the best that we could to spend time with her and to try to fill that void for her, but we just couldn't be there all the time for her. And so toward the end, she was just so lonely most of the time and really missing everybody and not able to, the families were just spreading out and becoming their own entities. And, it's hard as you get older to watch all of that happen. And she was really struggling, and it was breaking our hearts to watch her go through all of that and not be able to really fix that for her. And toward the end, a couple weeks ago, she fell. She had a pretty dramatic fall, and she broke her dominant wrist, and she broke her pelvis, and she had a huge mountain to climb back. And we'd had some conversations about her not wanting to do that, wanting to leave and be reunited with her husband that she loved so much and lost several years ago. And we had some real open-hearted conversations with her. And as things turned out, she ended up to really, really checking out mentally and really kind of making her own decision that she wasn't going to eat anymore and she wasn't going to try anymore. And so over the past probably 10 days, the whole family has had to come to terms with that and really allow for her to find her own way to seek her peace. And never was I called upon more to stand by and work on myself throughout this process as I was over the past 10 days. All of us have opinions of kind of how we think that should happen and who we think should be there and what kind of involvement, each person maybe should or shouldn't have in that scenario. And I had those too. I had my own ideas on what I thought mom would want and all of that. But, this mantra kept going on in my head over the past 10 days of just stand back, create the space, open up the opportunities, and then let people do what they decide to do. Just be there for them and present with them, with each person who was losing this wonderful woman, and let them do what they needed to do in that process. And so we did. I facilitated phone calls for people to say goodbye, and we had people come and visit us and stay at our home and see her and say their last goodbyes. And all of this was so painful as we continued to watch her decline in that process of dying. And the thing about death that I really saw with mom is that it's such a peeling away. I could see her just dropping the layers. She had spent a lot of time in her life really fearful. She had a rough upbringing. Her dad died when she was young. She had this really almost paralyzing sense of fear, a lot of neuroticism, really concerned and worried about things not working out or what ifs, or she was that apparently most of her life. And she certainly was that the 4 years that I knew her. And that fear just kept growing and growing in the past 2 years as she kept feeling herself losing her memory and letting things slip away. And so I watched her as she began the process of dying, and I could see even the emotions coming across her face, even though she wasn't even conscious toward the end. I could feel the emotions and see them coming across, well, there's fear and there's anxiety and She worked through them all, and I can tell you at the end, her face was so beautiful and peaceful. And so to give you a little bit of kind of the last few minutes, because it was so significant, and I can tell you up front that even explaining this to you, it won't be as powerful as being there in that moment. So what was going on was we were waiting. Everybody had said goodbye to her. She had essentially slipped into a coma. The day before that happened, she was chatting like a child. I mean, she had dropped a lot of her fear and anxiety, and it was like getting a picture of what she was like as a little girl. Kind of silly and chatty. And we just had a beautiful morning with her shortly before she went into the coma and didn't respond anymore after that. But during the process of her dying, we're all kind of waiting. We'd said goodbye, and now you're at that painful space of you don't want her to go, but you kind of want her to go because everybody's hurting, and she's certainly not getting anything out of this from us anymore. And you're wondering when it's going to be and who's supposed to be there. And gosh, so many emotions, going on, and each one of us were struggling. She has a son that's in Michigan and a daughter that's in California, and Rob and I are here, and grandchildren all over the country, and everybody trying to find their way through this to make peace with this decision that really she was making, beyond anything that we could really decide. And so as it kind of dialed down closer and closer, and, I kept saying to Rob, you can stay or you can go, it's up to you, and you don't have to be here, but you can be here. And there's no should and shouldn't or a right way or a wrong way to do this. And trying to just kind of open up space for each person to do what they needed to do. And one thing I knew about me was I needed to be there when she died. I don't know what that was all about, but I just felt a very, very powerful sense of needing to be there. So I spent a couple nights in the hospital with her, or in the rehab center with her, thinking that she might go that night, and she didn't. And we kept waiting, and you're almost feeling funny because you're waiting, and you're feeling bad about your willingness to let go, but that's pulling against your, not wanting to let go, and gosh, so many emotions. And let me just tell you a little bit about why this is so significant, particularly for Rob. Rob is the youngest of three kids, and his sister is a wonderful, gifted, and talented attorney out in California. His brother's a very gifted and a talented doctor in Michigan, and Rob is a wonderful and talented musician. That's what Rob does. It's nothing that's out there making a ton of money, and he's not a big, highfalutin success guy, but man, is he a beautiful and talented artist. And, but I always think he felt kind of like he wasn't really as good as his brother or sister. He didn't bring as much to the table as they did. And I think he struggled with that for a long time. And being the youngest, his mom kind of coddled him, and she didn't make him, step up to the plate as much as maybe she did the other two siblings. So I don't think he had a lot of confidence, and I'm not sure that he really felt like mom had a lot of confidence in him as well. So having said all of that, kind of fast forward to last Friday when mom really started to decline, and her blood pressure was going down and her pulse was going up, and all the signs of imminent death were coming. And she was, of course, just with her eyes closed, just kind of waiting it all out and breathing through this whole thing. And we were counting the seconds between her breaths, and, almost all of us just willing for this release, willing for her to have the release, to let go of that body, to expand and become all that she's so capable of being. And, there we were, and we're counting the breaths, and she's declining. But she went into this hyperventilating stage where she was breathing really, really fast. And as I was watching Rob across the room, I could see that it was just so painful for him. And this fear of death was so overpowering for him. And he just wasn't quite ready to let her go. And I could feel him, starting to really feel what she was feeling. And he came around, right in front of me, to this person that was actually asking her to let go. And what does that take? What kind of love does it take to look at somebody that you love so immensely and ask them to let go? And I watched Rob kind of transforming across the bed. I was on one side and he was on the other, and I watched him transform into this not so fearful of death, into this person who loved his mom enough to ask her to let go. Passionately ask her. But then it was just so painful, and I could see him kind of pacing and wanting to leave the room, and all I could think of was I wanted him to be there. It was the one thing I really felt powerfully, that Rob needed to be there at the death. But at the same time, right there, my mantra, stay out of the way, create the space, let him do whatever he felt he needed to do. And so he got up and he kind of said, I'm going to go take care of the dogs. You know, the dogs need to be fed. I'm going to go. And this voice inside of me was just saying, create some space, create some space. And I don't even know where it came from, but through my mouth came the words, Rob, baby, why don't you just tell mom that you'll be here for the next 5 minutes? You know that you'll be here and you'll hold her hand for the next 5 minutes. And if she would like to die while you're here, that would be wonderful. And that if she would like to wait until you leave, that's okay too. And let me just tell you, that's exactly what he did. He took his left hand, he put on her hand, his right hand on her head, and he leaned in, and it was the sweetest thing I've ever heard. I mean, here was this baby boy telling his mom that he was going to be there 5 more minutes and that he would be honored if she would drop her body and be set free while he was there holding her hand. And then he also said, but if that's not what you want, that's okay. And then we began. I mean, the magic began. It was like I leaned in, I put my hand on her hip and on her on her right shoulder, and he leaned in, and we both just began to meditate and be with her in stillness for the next 5 minutes. And I can just remember, I mean, being there, and I could count the seconds between her breaths. And at that point, she was hyperventilating, so it was pretty fast. It was like, breathe, 2, 3, breathe, 2, 3, breathe, 2, 3. And then it was 4, 5, 6, breathe, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And it was just like magic happened. From my side of the bed, I was sitting there holding this space, and I could feel her like a feather, you know, kind of quivering up here in the sky, and then just starting to just move and float. And within the space of exactly 5 minutes, she just landed like right in the nest. It was just this, I mean, I had counted to 2 minutes before I was even willing to look up. And again, both of us were so afraid if we moved that she would grab another breath. And I knew she was gone. And so I got up and I went around to Rob and I put my hand on his shoulder. And sure, her eyes were open and we both looked at her. And what I saw was the face of a 25-year-old woman. There was no stress, there was no fear, there was no anxiety. But I saw the eyes of a 105-year-old woman. There was this deep, powerful wisdom that was there. And when Rob looked up and he looked at that face, his first words were, I've never looked at death this way. And it was just in awe. You know, he sat there in awe, having experienced the ultimate love for somebody, the ultimate love of loving them enough to truly let them go and to truly hold the space for them to do that. And she gave him such a gift. You know, she gave him trust. She trusted him to hold that space for her while she landed in it. And I'm just telling you, it was so incredibly beautiful and painful, but beautiful. Here was a guy who just needed to hear. He needed to believe that he was enough. He needed to believe that he could offer something for his mom at a time when she really needed it. And she allowed him to do that. And it was magical. And it opened up so much in Rob. It's like seeing that crack, you know, where the light starts to pour through. His heart broke so wide open in that moment. And I got to be witness to that. And all I can say is, for those of you who get squeamish about death and dying and the process of dying, that is the place where you might be able to do some of your work. You know, if there's anybody who needs you to help them, who's experiencing this kind of a situation in hospice, to be able to sit with and be with somebody who is in the process of leaving this world. You know, I've said before, I work in birth and death. I work as a birth coach. I watch beings come into this world, into physical form, and it's such a miraculous thing. But you know what? It's so similar to the dying process. So if you can imagine, you're at a birth and the mom is laboring and laboring and laboring and laboring, and you go to check and she's dilated to 2. You know, she's just not even close. And you're just going, oh, come on, get this over with for her. And you're going through that process and you see that she's working so hard to bring this child into a form, from the formless into a form. And once that child comes, everybody is celebrating and everybody is excited because we have this new baby, this brand new, pure baby to celebrate. And you know what? Death isn't all that different. The work is being done again, right? My mom was working to let go, working to peel back the layers, working to step into her fears and face them and let them go and see something so much more powerful than that. She was doing so much work to do that, and we kept waiting and going, oh, this is so hard. You know, it's so hard for all of us. And we were all doing that work of peeling back and opening up and opening our hearts to whatever is to be, whatever is in that moment. And when she dies, she's the one who gets to celebrate. You know, can you imagine? Ram Dass talks about it being like taking off a tight shoe. You know, here is this beautiful, powerful being, and it's harnessed in this body that is full of fear and neuroticism and anxiety. And it's just 83-year-old body that's just so fearful. And finally, it gets liberated. It's done the work. It's finished the job. Well done, my good and faithful servant. It's come to this planet and done its thing. And now she's everywhere. I mean, she's just busted out of that body and she's everywhere for us now. And you know, the family that couldn't see her physically, they can experience her so fully now. You know, you think you love somebody, but when they die, if you love them, find them now. You know, really find them now. You don't get to have them in the physical form, but they're everywhere. If you open to it, if you have memories of them, if you talk about things they used to say, if you pictures and stories and mannerisms and all of those things keep them alive and present for us. And I can tell you that I have experienced the presence of my mom, my dad, Rob's mom, those that have died before me, my ex-husband, the father of my children. I've experienced their presence more in the past 10 days than I probably have in the past 10 years. So honor those opportunities. I know they can be scary, and it was painful to be there, painful. But she gave so much to us by allowing us to be witness to that. The witness of her letting it go and being fully at peace. Rob is so much stronger and better for having been through this experience, and I am so honored to have been a part of it. And I just wanted to share that with you because so many people are facing this. You know, we all have to face it, right? I mean, my parents are both gone. Rob's mom was the oldest in the last of that generation in this family. So we're next. I mean, we just are. Unless something unexpected happens to somebody younger than us, hopefully that won't. But we are going to be stepping up into that spot next. And the more comfortable that we can get with the idea of dying, the idea of dropping this body when it's time, when we've done our work, to die well, to live well, and then to die well. And Rosemary did that. She died well. I mean, she opened up and she fought like crazy. Most of it, I think, was fear of the unknown, even though she was a practicing Catholic her entire life. So much fear. But when she let go fully. And it just was so beautiful to be a part of. So I had to share that with you for those of you who are interested. I'd love to tell you more if there's any questions that you may have about it. But don't be afraid. Man, everything we go through in life offers something for everybody who's a part of it. Everybody. So no matter what you're going through in your life, whether it's death and dying or job loss or loneliness or health issues, there's something there for you. Look for it. There's something there for you, and there's something there for everybody around you who's affected by what you're going through. So look for those opportunities because they are gifts in disguise. So often they're gifts in disguise. So I just wanted to share that with you. It was a beautiful experience for me. I miss her already, but I'm looking for her. I'm looking for her everywhere. We got pictures, we've got her vases, we've got things she said and things she did, and our own little way of carrying her on in our lives. She's everywhere. So when you lose somebody that you love, if you really love them, find them now. And it's not so easy, but they're there if you're willing to look. I love you all, and thank you all for all the love and support and well wishes and prayers and the beautiful vibes of energy you sent my way over the past 10 days. I felt them. I really, really felt loved and carried and held. And I so much appreciate all of you for all the things that you've done for me. I love you all. Have a beautiful day. Namaste.